Hey there and welcome back to my channel. So we are at the final video of this second round of subscriber suggests. I've had a bunch of fun doing this entire series this week. I had a lot of fun doing it last time as well, so I'll definitely be back sometime to do another week of subscriber suggest. So definitely leave me your ideas and I will just start compiling them for the next round. But today's video has been requested so much. Probably one of my top, if not my number one suggested video ever. And so I finally got around to it. There's way too many of you to name for how many people have messaged me or have commented that you have questions about layering. But I remember the most recent one of you, Ckean on Instagram, actually asked some questions about this video. So I hope you're watching and I hope all of you who've had questions are watching as well. If you haven't checked out any of the other videos in this subscriber suggest series, either this time or the previous round, I have the playlist in the description box below, and I have my Instagram in the description box below as well. So I was putting off this video because I've been layering since basically almost since when I started buying perfumes. Obviously not the very beginning when I was very young. But I've been layering for a very long time, and a lot of the time it's just instinctual or accidental, so I won't necessarily remember the combinations I've used. And it'll be 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it'll smell amazing and I'll forget which ones were where. And before I started this channel, I didn't really have a reason to necessarily write them down or remember them for anyone other than myself. So I wanted to make sure that I was making a video that was as thorough as possible and was kind of a 101 on layering. And so I have the I kind of broke it down in 5 different ways that you could layer, and I don't necessarily do all 5, but they are like the 5 combinations that at least came to mind to me. And then I have some examples that I use, some examples that are tried and true, some newer ones, and we'll just kind of go through them one by one. So if you haven't subscribed already, don't forget to subscribe and let's get into it. So the first type of the 5 is single note with single note. And I'm going to be talking strictly about like 2 at a time, 2 scented products at a time. You can obviously then move that further and have it 3 or 4 or however many works for you. But to make it as simple as possible, these are like the rules, the quote-unquote rules that I'm kind of breaking down as if you were only to do it with 2, and then you can kind of apply this to however many fragrances or products. Considering, you know, all of these rules, it should work out more or less. And it really is about having fun. I mean, I don't really think there's especially any restrictions. You will know if something smells off almost immediately. And not every combination is meant to work. Not every combination will work. And it's a lot of trial and error. These are just the best tips and tricks that I've come by through my many years of doing this, both for fun and in preparation for this video. So the first combination, as I say, is single note plus single note. And personally in my collection, I don't own any specifically created single note fragrances. I do have ones that are fragrances that are quite linear and simple, where, for example, it's a whole bunch of like lemon, bergamot, citrusy notes, and more or less the fragrance is linear, let's say. It's a very specific thing and it's not really complex, but I don't own any single note fragrances that just smell like peach or just smell like vanilla. And a good example of that would be Soli Notes. I've been interested in trying them out. I've never tried them out, and I would have to order them online because I don't think we have them anywhere in store, and we never have them at our Marshalls and Winners and TJ Maxx like you guys have in the States. So I might try them out one day, and if I do, then I can come back and tell you guys about that. But that essentially would be the most simple way to layer. If you have a strawberry, completely strawberry single note fragrance, and a vanilla, you can easily make a strawberries and cream or strawberry and vanilla fragrance. If you have strawberry and kiwi, strawberry kiwi. If you have chocolate and vanilla, there you go. It's just very simple. You know that what you're gonna get is, you know, scent number 1 plus scent number 2. And while I don't have, as I say, single note fragrances, 2 fragrances that came to mind that I do use sort of in a single note fashion are the following. So the first one, I've talked about it a whole bunch. This is a huge layering tool for me because I just find that it actually ends up working for a lot of layering options. Whenever I want to put an intense shot of sweetness into a fragrance that is needing it, or that I feel that it needs it for that combination to help me like the fragrance more, or just for that particular vibe. And that is Aqualina's Pink Sugar. This is not a single note fragrance. However, because it is very sugary cotton candy caramel, it's not that it's simplistic. I actually think it's a lot more interesting than people who've never smelled it give it credit for. I thought it was going to be a lot more of a simplistic, kind of like a Michel Legermain kind of easy linear fragrance, but it's not. It's a lot more interesting and especially loved and complimented fragrance, but it's a very easy way to sweeten up a fragrance, and it ends up working for so many combinations. I couldn't even think of how many to bring out, so I'm just gonna say for a great majority of cases where I've needed a fragrance to be sweeter, and a lot sweeter and sugarier, this has come in handy time and time again. And I mentioned in my Baccarat Rouge 540 video, I do mention some layering options in that, so if you haven't checked that out, definitely do. I use this one. I use Pour Femme by Dolce & Gabbana. It's really just about grabbing something that in my collection is as close to one sort of thing, like one idea and concept, and mixing it in with another. Another example, as I say, other than Aqualina Pink Sugar, is something like Clean Cool Cotton. It just smells clean. It smells like laundry. It smells soapy. And honestly, if I need it on its own, then it's a nice kind of single note moment. But it's a really easy, clean, fresh way to add, again, like a laundry, clean soapiness to a combination if ever I should need it. And those are the easiest ways to create a layering combo, because if you did have, theoretically, not with those fragrances, but theoretically, if you did have 2 single note fragrances, as I say, you pretty much know what you're gonna get at the end of the layering endeavor. You're gonna get the first note and the second note, and more or less, it's a good place to start out if you're unsure about how to combine a whole bunch of different notes with 2 or 3 or even more different fragrances. Then the second out of 5 different versions of how you can layer is actually one I hinted to before, and that's more so what I end up doing with my, I don't know, my type of single note fragrances. So things like this, where I feel like I'm using them in lieu of a single note fragrance, I then combine with more complex fragrances. And if you did have actual single note fragrances, that's where you could use it to highlight a note in a particular fragrance. For example, if you have a single note fragrance that is pistachio, just straight up pistachio, there's a whole bunch actually. There's one by Laura Mercier that I've always wanted to try. I think it's like pistachio brûlée or something like that. Regardless, that would be a great fragrance to then layer with another fragrance that has pistachio within its composition, like with Rose's Berberanza, that is a very rose pistachio syrupy type gourmand fragrance. If you layer it with something that is a single note pistachio, you're then gonna highlight that particular note. You can also use it for fragrances where the note you want to highlight is a little bit more in the base or a little bit more in the background, and you can try to amp that up. For example, a lot of fragrances have vanilla in the base, and if you're someone who super loves vanilla and you have a fragrance that has it within its mix, but you wish to really amp that up even further so that you can smell it from right when you spray and you're not waiting until the dry down, you could use a vanilla single note fragrance with a fragrance that has vanilla in its base so that you are smelling the note that you want straight from the top all the way to the dry down. All right, so now we get to the third out of fifth way to layer fragrances. And this is the one I personally use the most. That is a fragrance, a full-on eau de toilette, eau de parfum, and another fragrance. So none of them are single note fragrances. They both have a bunch of top, middle, or heart and base notes, and that's really what I end up doing 95, if not more percent of the time. I'm just grabbing two different fragrances that I feel for whatever reason would go well together. Now this can be in kind of two different ways. It can be two similar types of fragrances where I think, you know, this is a clean, powdery, shampooy fragrance, this is a clean, powdery, shampooy fragrance, and I feel like they're gonna go well together, and they do. Or it can be two very different type of fragrances that have something, a note or a base or something that kind of don't clash together but actually help each other out and create a third fragrance that's actually super beautiful and super wearable and heightens what each of those fragrances could have done separately on their own. In another case, I also use this method a lot when there's one fragrance where I'm not especially loving it, especially as someone that doesn't throw out their fragrances or sell them. I keep all of my bottles. So as much as I can, I want to try to use the fragrances that I have. So if there are fragrances, and I will get to some examples, where I'm having trouble or difficulty wearing them and I've tried many a time, I will use layering options to kind of get myself A, more accustomed to that fragrance so I'm not so turned off by it, but B, also really just to use it up and to use the second fragrance to kind of mask the areas where I'm less sure of or less liking that original fragrance. So one example that I've actually really enjoyed and have tried to use as of late is with Hynose by Lancome. This is a fragrance that's very vanilla centric, and I was very like-hate, I won't even say love-hate. I was very like-hate with this fragrance, and there are many days, including today, where it just gets to be too much for me. I'm not a huge vanilla person, and I've tried more and more to be into more different types of vanilla, but I feel like I'm much more comfortable starting in a more spiced bourbon vanilla, like Dior Addict Lune Féline type area. When it gets to be a little lighter and very pure vanilla and a colder vanilla, or even like a warm vanilla sugar type thing, it gets a little bit too sickly for me, and I struggle a lot with it. And this has the tendency to do that on more than 50% of the times I wear it. So I've tried a couple combinations, and one I've actually really liked is Michael Kors Wanderlust Sublime. This is a very beachy scent. It's very like beachy floral, slightly even like sea salty, but I don't even think there's sea salt in this, but it's just very evoking, I've said before, of just like a California beach, California girl, tan skin, beachy florals, a little bit of sea salt, and it doesn't smell like sunscreen, as I say, but it just even smells like beachy hair products. It's beautiful. I love this fragrance on its own, and what it does is cuts through a lot of how I can explain this kind of like cold, I'll spray it here, this kind of cold vanilla syrup, I suppose, or cold vanilla pod scent that can kind of get stuck at the back of my nose, and it's too creamed. It's not even, it's very creamy, but not in a lactonic, because I usually love creamy fragrances that are very lactonic and smooth. It needs something to cut through that, because I have trouble with that element to it. It is nice after it, you know, stays on the skin after a while, but what I really love about this is it's slightly beachy, more fresh, even a little bit like sea salt tardiness, it can just really, really cut through that element that makes Hynose difficult to wear for me. And one of the questions that you guys have mentioned or have asked me is how I actually layer them on myself, on my skin or on my clothing. And it really depends on the combination that I'm trying to do in terms of how many sprays I'm wearing. More often than not, I will have to see which fragrance is stronger. If there's a fragrance that is especially stronger than the other, then I'll obviously spray more sprays of the lighter fragrance to kind of even them out. As much as possible, I'm trying to keep them as even as possible in terms of how they smell on me. Now, it might be that it's 6 sprays of one to 1 spray of the other, and that just happens to be the ratio. But more often than not, I couldn't say, you know, 2 of one and then 3 of the other for every combination, because it really just depends on what combination of fragrances you're using. And the other question was how you actually layer them on you. Personally, what I prefer, you're welcome to do whatever works for you, but personally, I do like more or less to spray them in the same area. I know there are people that would spray, for example, Hynose on the bottom of the arm right here, and then the upper arm with the other, and have that be the combination. I'm more likely to then, that's how I would do it if I was like testing 2 fragrances and I was just trying to figure out a review for you guys. But in general, if I'm layering fragrances on top of me, then I would actually kind of, if I have 2 of this, I'd spray 2, and then I spray the 2 others kind of in the general area. I'm not spraying them right on top of each other on my skin, obviously, but in the general area, because I do really want those notes to mix. I don't want to move one arm and smell Hynose and then move the other arm and, you know, another part of my body and then just smell the other fragrance. I do want them to be mixed. So personally, I do more or less spray in the same area. If some gets on top of it, great. If some is a little bit to the side, that's okay too, but I'm not spraying them very separate to one another. So as I say, that is pretty much my most common way to layer fragrances. It's with a fragrance and with 2 fragrances, or 2 or 3, however, and it's with complex fragrances. They are not single note fragrances. So sometimes they're very similar, or they have got the same vibe, and I just have a feeling they might go well together, and they end up working really well together. And one of those cases is Valentina Poudre and Cashmere Mist, I think it's called. Yeah. Cashmere Aura, sorry. Cashmere Aura by Donna Karan. This is a much more, they're both clean fragrances, but this is a clean, like a sparkling, aldehydic, clean powder, and this is more of a clean, makeup-y cosmetic powder. And while they're both powdery, this has a much more aldehydic sparkling element. This is a much more synthetic cosmetic powder, and I actually really enjoy the 2 of them together. It really helps. These are both fragrances that I would wear on their own, and I do like, so it's not a case of, like it with Hynose, of trying to mask certain elements in either of these fragrances, especially with Valentina. I adore this fragrance. I wear it on its own all the time, and it's super stunning, but I find it brings a little bit more of that pure powderiness to the Cashmere Aura, and this adds a little bit more of something that can cut through that because it's more aldehydic to this. But otherwise, these are they're in the same genre of fragrance, so it's really about seeing what works, and this just happens to be an easy combination, which I've worn many a time, especially on like something like a cashmere sweater or something cuddly, a scarf. I just think those combinations work super well together. And they happen to be similar, so it kind of goes without saying to a certain extent. Like I mentioned, you can also go for 2 fragrances that are very, very different, and I did that as well. I have long been trying to find a soft way to combine Gemma di Paradiso by Roberto Cavalli, because this smells a lot like bug repellent to me. And I know it's a fragrance that a lot of people actually love, and I happened to find mine in like the 1999 Shoppers fragrance section ages and ages ago, and I really do like Roberto Cavalli 99% of the time. There is something about this that, yeah, smells like bug spray. It isn't necessarily all the time, but I'm not ever super impressed by it. I think at maximum I'm kind of meh about it, but most of the time I can smell like a slight fruitiness, and then it's actually kind of like vanilla ambery in the base, but not in a good way. I don't know, it's just trying the combination of the fruity opening, the vanilla amber base, and the florals in the middle smells like bug spray to me. And I didn't want to layer this. It would have been easy to layer this with something that was an extreme strong floral to try to just completely overthrow this, but I was trying to find a way to soften it up. And I found one most recently, and it's worked. I think I've worn it once and I liked it. So this is a very new combination. And that's with, what is it called? It's called Drunk on Youth by Derek Lam, 10 Crosby. And this is a very soft white floral. It's a very soft white floral that's slightly vanilla-y, but it's a really nice vanilla in this. Yeah, and it's very, very soft. It doesn't last very long. This is a lot more long-lasting than this is, but that's kind of a really nice way that I found, where I obviously spray more to this, maybe like 2 or 3 sprays of this to every one of the Gemma di Paradiso, but it really softens it up. It brings in white floral elements, which I adore, and it isn't completely taking over this scent. It's just kind of evening it out, making it a bit more even keeled, and taking the edge off of that bug spray note composition that I am just not a huge fan of. And then the last combination of this fragrance plus fragrance that I want to talk to you guys about is because of a new fragrance I picked up, and I mentioned that I was trying to figure it out, and I'm trying to layer with things, and that is Musc Immortel by Atelier des Arts. This, the more I wear it, the more I like it, for sure, but I wanted to find like a combination that I could wear when I just wasn't so keen on experiencing that dusty opening to get to the heart and dry down that I actually have come to enjoy in this. It's not by any means my favorite, but the heart and the base are great. So I wanted something that was darker, maybe with some oud, maybe a little bit boozy, to kind of amp up the opening and not make it so, like, the only way I can describe it is dusty. It truly has like a dusty woodiness to it. So I brought in Oud Malachi, or Malachi. I always struggle with the pronunciation of that one, by Chopin. I really have come to love this. This is a boozy oud. It's super strong and kind of, I don't know, it kind of stays the same in the opening and the heart. In the dry down, it gets a little bit warmer, which I actually do love, and a little bit sweeter actually, but it just helps amp up that beginning, because the opening to this, it's not that it's a strong opening where it's choking you out or anything. It just smells like dust. Like, it smells very dusty, and this really helps for me personally to have that opening be a little bit more boozy, a little more rich, and then this really shines in the heart and dry down. So because this one's strong, I don't try to mask this over. They're kind of equal sprays, honestly. And it's a really nice and quite expensive layering option that I've enjoyed wearing recently. Okay, so then we get to the fourth layering option, and that is with a lotion plus a fragrance. And any type of fragrance. It could be a single note or a regular fragrance. In my case, it's a regular fragrance. So that can be done in 2 ways. You can either have a fragrance that is completely scented. In the case, I actually do this often. It's Snowflake by Lush. I think this was actually just limited edition, but I still am using mine, and it's still not expired. So I love it. This is a very beautiful, like, almond milk, cocoa butter, almond slivered fragrance, or body lotion, and it has a whole lot of fragrance in it. It's a Lush product. It is super, super scented. You could easily wear this and not wear a fragrance, which I have done before. But in the case of this, it layers beautifully with fragrances that already have almond in them. And two that I've done the most with that one, honestly, have been the Elie Saab Girl of Now and the Girl of Now Shine. I tend to do Girl of Now more with that, if only because Girl of Now Shine, I don't know why I get like, I reserve to wear on its own a lot more, even though, yeah, even though it pairs beautifully and they are quite similar, I would prefer, most likely, Girl of Now, the original Girl of Now, with Snowflake. They just go so beautifully together, and Girl of Now Shine has a pineapple note, which I adore, but I think it just adds like another element to this, and that is not what Snowflake needs. Snowflake is already such a deep, rich almond cocoa butter scent that these two pair beautifully together. And that's kind of what you can do. You can see what kind of fragrance you have, what notes are in it. It's usually only going to be kind of one or two things that are listed anyways. It's not going to be as complex in its listing as a fragrance is, but it can help you to judge what you're going to go with. So, I mean, this was almond and cocoa butter. It was very gourmand. It was very rich and warm, and that just ended up being a good combination. If you have a fragrance that, for example, if I had one that was raspberry and lemon, I might go for Girl of Now Shine, the other fragrance in this range, because that is very raspberry lemon centric. So it really is about just finding what matches, and it's quite easy to do. In another case, I don't really, that's just like a particular lotion that I got from Lush, but in general, I use a lot of Dove body butters, and I have this one and the original one, and that really works easily for me. I know I've gotten some questions of like lotions and creams that I use. I use a lot of these, this one and the blue one. I go through a lot of them because they just smell like Dove. They smell very clean and shower fresh, and this one smells a little more feminine and girly. That one just smells a lot more just clean, and those are usually the kind of fragrances that I equate with showering anyways, and that's usually when I'm, you know, using lotion or body cream on my entire body, is right after a shower or a bath. So something like this will easily pair with my fragrances or with my lotions because they all just smell like clean, shower fresh products. But that just is me. And the last way you can use a lotion with a fragrance is in the most simple way, and that's if you get a set and you get the lotion that matches the fragrance. I actually do this very rarely, if only because I usually give all my lotions away. I happened to find one. I had Scandal's Le Lotion Parfumé, so the perfumed body lotion in English, of Jean-Paul Gaultier's Scandal, and I pulled out Scandal. It usually just smells like a lighter, obviously perfumed version. Yeah, it just smells like a lighter version of what the eau de parfum or eau de toilette smells like. And Scandal wouldn't need this because it's very strong on its own, but in some cases it might help to have that kind of base there where it's already scented exactly like the perfume, and then you just spray on top and it'll last you a whole lot longer. And then the fifth way and the final way is a way I actually don't do, but that's because it is an oil, a perfumed oil, and a fragrance or another product. And the reason I don't is because I only own 2 perfume oils, and they're both Middle Eastern perfume oils. This is one of them. And they're very strong on their own, and they're compositions where I feel like it really doesn't need that. And it's probably the layering option I would recommend the least. I haven't had a lot of experience with perfumed oils because I prefer spray products. But in general, I think I would suggest the kind of same overall rules of trying to make sure at the very least it either matches or it's definitely not clashing. And in a lot of situations, the perfume oils are going to be quite rich and deeper. Even if it's a lighter, like floral like this, it's going to be a stronger scent. So I would recommend that the fragrance you're then spraying on top of it isn't trying to compete with an oil that's going to be lasting maybe days on your skin. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this very thorough array into layering, and that it helped you guys, and that the kind of examples that I showed were helpful to you guys. As always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!